I was wondering what I should be actually speaking after hearing all these illustrious speakers before me. And I was wondering, how should I actually structure this presentation or my talk, in what format? So I thought I'll do it in three phases. One is, of course, I want to make some general comments. The second one is I really want to talk about a concept called convergence, which, of course, Ingersoll is practicing. And the third one, which I think is very important, is something called as collective ownership. On the first part, which is more the generic stuff, is capitalism good, is socialism good? I think we've gone through that for a long, long time. And I don't think so there's any model that really says that this is the perfect model that needs to be followed. We have seen the downsides of a number of models, and as far as human society is concerned, it'll continue to kind of demand that it improves its living standards. It'll continue to demand that it lives a better life, and we've seen that for centuries and ages. A few chords that actually struck me when Mr. Bittu was talking about as to what exactly are we trying to do. Seems like we're driving in a high-speed car straight into a wall, not realizing what the consequences of that are going to be. But then actually, when I peel the onion a little bit and I see a country like India or our neighboring countries, I do realize that there is a substantial portion of population which is probably very young. A young population saying, listen, I want to live better. I want to come out from that poverty stage which defines that the life I've been living is not worth it. I really want to kind of move forward. And whether we like it or not, I don't see that there's any way that you can actually stop the juggernaut. You can possibly only get stopped if there's probably a binary transition, if it's a 0 or a 1. And I think some of the reflections that seem to be coming out in terms of climate change, in terms of the disasters that are coming out, seem to be leading in that direction, which says that, hey, listen, if you're not going to do that, there's going to be something that the nature is going to do, which you will have to change your lifestyle, which is going to force you to kind of change in a manner, whether you like it or not, and whether it's capitalism, financial policy, socialism, all that is immaterial, you better change. So when I kind of look myself into a corporate sector, thoroughly bred in capitalism, understanding that at the end of every quarter, I need to kind of make an announcement to the shareholders saying, this quarter was fantastic, and I promise you that the next quarter is going to be equally good. It's a challenge. Because then there is society which is demanding, what value you have created for the money which I've invested. And on the other side, as a large enterprise, I've got to keep performing and saying, listen, yes, we're going to actually create value for you since you've invested. And there's the other side, which is actually telling you, listen, climate solutions or the climate changes that are happening may not allow you to do that in the future. So the cost of social unrest, in my opinion, is probably at some point going to overshadow what I would say is a shareholder value maximization, which I understand. 10 years ago, somebody asked me, what is the leadership profile you're going to look at? And I tell you, 10 years ago when I did an interview, I said, yeah, this guy's got to have Six Sigma, he's got to have lean, he's got to have the energy, he's got to have all those initiatives. He's got to be a team player, all this good stuff. In the decades of 90s and 2000, when people were talking about leadership, those would be the mantras. Yesterday, I had an interview with Hindustan Times saying, what do you think should be the new leadership model? And I said, listen, if I have to kind of actually now look at a leader, the economic value creation obviously is given. He needs to do that. But if he doesn't have an environmental value creation in his DNA, then I think he's a bad leader. So I think we are moving from a stage of what I would say a previous decade where we said economic value creation was the key. We are moving into a new dimension, a new DNA of the new leader by saying if he or she does not have the environmental value creation, shame on us. Shame on us because the social unrest is going to actually create something which we are beginning to see. Recently, there was a water war in Gurgaon. I don't know how many of you from Delhi, Gurgaon, where people actually came out on the road and said, if you don't get water, we're actually going to have a war. Literally, they had a war. Literally, they had a fight. I come from Bangalore. And of the 200 or whatever, 900 and odd lakes, some 50 years ago, Bangalore has got something like 100 lakes which are still existing, which are completely polluted. The water table has gone down. We are unable to pump water, which used to be at 40, 50 feet, now is at about 1,000 feet, if you have to actually drill water up. So now, we have a situation which says that, listen, there is the unavailability of water, but here it is that, we need to actually create economic value. The managers, the employees, the workers probably would refuse to come because the basic needs are not being satisfied. So the cost of social unrest is probably going to have a direct impact on economic value creation. So how do you actually tackle this situation where there's a younger generation which is saying, listen, we want to actually improve our life standards, and then there is this, huge rhetoric which is saying, we need to have climate issues controlled, we got to do all this stuff, and so there are going to be two huge challenges to comprehend it. So what do corporates like us do? What should the industry do? Unfortunately, we cannot be living without industry. At the same time, we cannot be living without society. So we got to find a way. We got to find a midway which says, yeah, we need to solve this issue. So yes, I think somebody mentioned, these sessions will not make any sense, but I tell you, this is where I think the minds have got to meet and say collectively, what do we need to do? Now I'm going to switch to the second topic, which I define as convergence. And I'm going to take a few examples of how corporates are beginning to actually at least react responsibly. And I'm going to take an example of food security in India. We, as Ingersoll have been actually battling, I wouldn't say battling, but we've been trying to kind of work on the food security issue in India. We realized a few years ago that if we have to actually address the food security issue in India, we've got to build cold chains, and I think a number of people have been talking about. So when we actually approached the government, we said, we're going to build cold chains, and these have got to be built in rural areas and in districts. The first question was, where is the grid power to actually run a cold chain? Forget about building a cold chain. Where is the power available for you to actually build a cold chain? So if there is a food wastage of 30% in this country, and we do think that the solution is to build a cold chain, the question was, yeah, you go and put up a cold chain, but there's no power to run that cold chain. So what should an industry do when you see that there's an opportunity, an economic value that you can create, not only for the enterprise, but also for the society? Then how do you actually approach this issue? Surprisingly, the amount of technology that's available around the world is immense. And I think we collectively can solve those problems, whether it's through academia, whether it's through enterprise, whether it's through technology, by actually collectively working together. And we don't do that very effectively. We don't do that very effectively because each one of us wants to actually utilize resources, waste resources, and reinvent the entire wheel. And I think that's where the concept of convergence is absolutely important. And we call it basically, there are three ways of doing this convergence. There's got to be technology convergence, there's got to be innovation convergence, and there's got to be business convergence, where enterprises get together, share technologies, and not really destroy their own intellectual property, but really create solutions at the end to the society, for the society. So what we did is we actually addressed the entire solution. We went to a large truck manufacturer and we said, listen, we're going to build some technologies which will be battery powered or solar powered. We don't have the technology of how to build trucks and cars, but we have the technology to build what I would call as cooling temperatures, where we both can join together and actually get to the farmer at the end level. We said we're going to build static infrastructure, which is not going to run on grid power, but will run on solar technologies. So here you see a variety of industries coming together and saying, let's build solutions where the farmer wins, where we can actually build cold chain, and we can actually build a system which will generate value not only to the user, to the society in rural areas who are below the poverty line. And I think we can do it. And it's very important for all of us to recognize that in the future, if we continue to build everything on our own and start destroying resources to do that, then what we are doing is we're not doing a great job. there is enough knowledge, enough technology available on the shelves, so it's important not only for the corporate sector, but for the society, the academia, the NGOs, to get together and say, here are the 4 social problems we need to fix, let's get together, share technologies, and build a solution. Whether it's about growing forests, whether it's about deforesting, whether it's about saving wildlife, whether it's about saving biodiversity, I think we got to get those platforms created. And I think that's number one. Is if convergence is not going to take place, we will keep debating. We will keep continuously debating as to how the biodiversity is getting ruined, and this could be globally. This convergence can be global. It doesn't have to be specifically for a local country or a region. The last topic I want to really address is on collective ownership. I think we've come to a stage where it's important for societies to understand that it's not about ownership at an individual level. And when I look at this value chain, what we talked about, of creating infrastructure, of creating static, of creating mobile infrastructure, to take food, to take perishable food from the farm gate to the table. Who should own that infrastructure? A marginal farmer will never be able to own that infrastructure. He doesn't have the power or the financial capability to own that infrastructure. A bank will not fund him. A financial institution will not fund him to own that infrastructure. Now, I do believe that there has to be a new way of thinking this. A new way of thought process which says that, is it the state? Is it somebody else? Is it that we can collectively own this infrastructure which will create these solutions for the society at large? And I think this collective ownership, which not only will ensure that the reduction of resource utilization, but actually create a greater value for societies, should be the next step for us to think. So ladies and gentlemen, I know, we all know, there are very, very bright minds sitting in this audience. And they're bright minds who are basically voicing these concerns. But I think there has to be an execution plan that says, yeah, we can make it work. I can be very emotional about everything. But I think at the end of the day, we have to realize that there are realistic issues in the world. There are populations below the poverty line who are kind of screaming to say, improve my standards of living. I heard my first speaker on the story of Copenhagen. Then I kind of compare it with India. It could be done in Copenhagen so effectively. And I think Jonathan was just nudging me. He says, can you actually drive that in Bombay, of putting a cycle infrastructure where people will drive on cycles in Bombay? Will the society accept that? I think we've got to find solutions which are regional, which are local, which we've got to kind of fix it. And I think if we don't get together, and it's been proven time and again, that once we collaborate, when we converge, solutions can actually be found very effectively at speeds which would surprise us. But I think, yes, the debates are important. But at the end of the day, execution is more important than debates. And we have seen that it can actually be done. It can create economic value. It can improve standards of life. And yet, we don't have to, misutilize the resources wherever we operate. Thank you very much.